Guys, Drake might be the most intelligent specimen in the rap game. What he just did on that diss track he dropped last night was beyond hilarious. We're gonna dive into what he said on the diss track. But I'll be honest, Drake might have backed himself in a dangerous corner here, because
if Kendrick is active in this beef, which I think he will be, like, he's gonna take the crown no matter what. He's gonna destroy Drake. There's been rumors that he's had a diss track in the cut for the last 4 years waiting to drop it. I don't know what he's waiting on, but Drake tonight just did something we've never seen before. With all this talk about which diss track is AI, which one is real, no one knows. Drake just pulled the funniest move that's probably ever existed in a rap beef. He basically wrote a diss track, put Tupac and Snoop Dogg's vocals on it through AI, and released it as if it's like Tupac and Snoop Dogg talking to Kendrick on this track. Now, this is hilarious. I mean, I gotta dive deeper into these bars, and we'll do that in this video, but there's not much that could fly over your head here. Like, with his first diss track, there was a lot of subliminals. Obviously, we found out little things, like when Drake said, "I'm out in Tokyo because I'm big in Japan." That wasn't just in reference to him being, a big artist in Tokyo. That was him actually stealing Future's girl, who was named Tokyo, and bringing her to his shows and buying her designer. Like, on that first diss track, he was super calculated with the subliminals. This one, it just seems like he's trolling Kendrick at this point. Now, I don't like how the goalpost changes right after Drake drops. Let's not forget that when Kendrick put out Like That, it took Drake 3 weeks to respond. Like, J. Cole had enough time to put a diss track out and apologize before Drake even mentioned this beef. But to me personally, I don't like this whole thing of, being on the clock with a diss track, right? I think with hip-hop in general, with music in general, it's got to be quality over quantity. So I'd rather get a scathing, crazy diss track that changes the whole game in, a month from now, instead of, making Kendrick release 3-4 days after Drake drops something, right? I don't think Kendrick has to respond, in just a couple days and he's on the clock and, we got to rush him to drop this. I think it's no, in the grand scheme of things, we're going to look at who has the better bars, who's got what dirt on the other person, and really who just deserves the crown of being the best rapper in the game. I don't think this has much to do with, who drops the fastest diss track. But I do respect Drake for, continuously going at Kendrick, and you could tell he really wants this. Like, he wants all the smoke, and it almost seems like he has something in the tuck, like some sort of information on Kendrick that he's just waiting to drop, because he keeps mentioning, that he wants Kendrick to come out and say something. The last bar of this song, Drake says, "Soon as you get the courage to drop, I'm out on the loose." So it's obvious that, Drake is keeping something tucked. Drake has some sort of information on Kendrick that he's waiting to reveal. And I have no doubt that Kendrick also has a bomb to drop on Drake, and he's just waiting. He's just perfecting it, and it's going to shake up the whole game. But it is kind of interesting, right? Because at the same time, I think that whole on the clock thing is bullshit. Like, I think if someone disses you, we're not going to judge whether you win or lost based on how long it took you to respond. I think it's the quality of the response that determines whether you won or lost. But if Drake just continuously comes at Kendrick, non-stop, just keeps throwing diss tracks at him, just keeps taunting him, and we get a Kendrick response once every 2-3 months, you kind of have to give some props to Drake in that regard, where he can, continuously be active in this and continuously taunt Kendrick and really just try to get him out of hiding, right? I definitely think, he scores some points for just being so ready to actually jump into this beef, to make this a big back and forth. Whereas Kendrick, I think, is taking more of his time to drop something that's a lot more calculated, that really shakes the game up, but maybe won't respond as frequently as Drake would. Now, in this diss track, basically, Drake starts it off by rapping with Tupac's vocals and from Tupac's perspective. And now this is super creative, because on To Pimp a Butterfly, the last track on there features an interview between Kendrick and Tupac. So I think this is kind of in reference to that, while also being in reference to the fact that throughout this whole beef, these diss tracks keep dropping and we don't know if they're AI or not. So Drake is really putting a creative spin on, all the different angles of this beef. And basically, he's rapping from the perspective of Tupac, telling Kendrick, you're supposed to be the king of the West Coast, hip-hop's new savior, you gotta come and respond at this little light-skinned guy. And he is pulling the Eminem card in 8 Mile, where, if you guys don't remember, in that movie, Eminem's battling against this other rapper, right? And Eminem is, this white boy from Detroit who is a very easy target. But what Eminem does is, in his rap, he raps about all the possible things that this guy could diss Eminem about. And so it takes all this guy's ammo away from him. And Drake is kind of doing the same thing. He's rapping from Tupac's perspective, where Tupac is telling Kendrick to talk about Drake liking young girls, saying that, Joe Budden mentioned that on his podcast. And I think that is one of the bigger things that Kendrick could come at Drake with. He's had some very weird allegations and some weird situations with younger girls where you don't really know if he's romantically involved with them. And it's just strange because he's, pushing 40 years old, and he's in very weird communication with some younger girls. So I think that's, an easy insult for Kendrick to throw at Drake, but Drake's kind of putting that back in his face here by mentioning it first. Yeah, he's rapping from the perspective of Tupac, which is just hilarious, right? Talking to Kendrick, kind of in reference to that To Pimp a Butterfly interlude where Kendrick took Tupac vocals and pretended like he was having a conversation with Tupac, kind of like in reference to that. Then he puts on Snoop Dogg AI vocals, and he's just basically telling Kendrick, like, you know, we know you're scared to drop because Taylor Swift just dropped her album and that's going to go #1. And if you dropped your diss track, you know, Taylor Swift's album will take away all the attention of your diss track. And I don't think that's, you know, the strongest thing that Drake could say here, because he's made it very known that he's pushed back his albums also because he knew they would go #2 if Taylor Swift dropped on the same day. But what really interests me here is that at the end of this track, Drake just continuously emphasizes that he's got a bomb to drop on Kendrick, and he's just waiting for Kendrick to respond so he could drop this bomb on him. And this has to be something that we just don't know about, right? If Drake really has some sort of bomb to drop on Kendrick, it's got to be some unrevealed information, some private information. Same way Pusha T revealed that Drake had a kid. Maybe Drake has some sort of information like that on Kendrick, and he's just hiding it and waiting for Kendrick to respond so he can, you know, come back and reveal some sort of crazy info to the world. He's kind of hinted at Kendrick having some sort of marital strains. In his first diss track, he was saying, you know, the way you're doing splits, your pants might rip. That's in reference to, you know, there was rumors that Kendrick was potentially going to split up with his wife and he had an affair. And so the pants might rip is in reference to like Kendrick's pants literally ripping and, you know, him having intercourse with another woman. He also says, I'd be with some bodyguards like Whitney, which is in reference to Kendrick's wife, whose name is Whitney, allegedly having an affair with Kendrick's bodyguard. Kendrick's private life is kept very private, right? We don't know about his marriage. And ever since this diss track dropped from Drake, there's been these rumors circulating that Kendrick maybe had an affair, or his wife even had an affair, and they were going through some trouble in their marriage and potentially were on the verge of splitting up. Now, this isn't confirmed, but maybe Drake has some sort of exclusive information in that regard, and he's just waiting for Kendrick to respond before he drops it on the world. But again, man, I think, you know, Kendrick's entitled to take a bit of time with this response. Like, it took Drake over 3 weeks to say anything about this entire beef. And now he's, you know, acting like Kendrick's on the clock. Kendrick's got to respond. Like, he's egging Kendrick on to just rush this diss track. But it's like, it's hypocritical because Drake took his sweet time to release, you know, whatever he released. And in this new song, he's claiming that the first diss track he put out only took him 1 or 2 hours to complete. But it's like, it took you 3 weeks to release it. So, you know, are you really being honest here? Like, let's keep it real. Kendrick is a super hard target. I don't think Drake can stand toe-to-toe with him lyrically. And I've said this before, and I think Drake knows he has to be extremely calculated with these responses. And I think that's why it took him so long initially to come out with any sort of diss track. And now that he did, he's acting like the rules have changed and Kendrick needs to, you know, rush some sort of response. So I'm curious what you guys think. Like, should that be a rule in a rap battle where rappers need to respond in a certain amount of time and they're on the clock? And if they don't respond in a certain amount of time, then they lose? Like, you have all these guys in Drake's camp who are saying that Kendrick's got to respond and Drake was able to take his time because he's going up against like 5 different rappers. But now that Kendrick's only going up against Drake and he's had this diss track apparently for like 4 years ready to drop, that like he needs to drop it and, you know, the rules have changed and like he's on the clock. I highly disagree, man. I think Kendrick can take his time with this, and I'll emphasize it again. I think Drake is in trouble when Kendrick drops. Drake is a super calculated guy, probably the most calculated rapper in the entire industry with every move he makes. But the last time he jumped out the gate like this was the Pusha T situation, and it didn't end well for him. And I would argue Kendrick is a much stronger rapper than a guy like Pusha T. And I would also argue that Kendrick has been wanting this beef for the last 10 years. And he either probably has some info on Drake, or he's just ready to demolish and dissect and destroy every aspect of Drake's entire career. If you guys didn't know, before Kendrick blew up with Good Kid, Mad City, Drake put him on Take Care, Drake brought him on tour, and there's a lot of interviews of Kendrick being extremely thankful to Drake for this opportunity. But ever since he dropped his Control verse in 2013, where he told Drake and like 10 other rappers that he was trying to destroy them, that he's got love for them, but that they don't stand toe-to-toe with him and that he's just the best. Ever since then, through subliminal disses, we've seen that Kendrick is hungry for this beef. Kendrick wants that top spot, and he likely knows that in order to get that, he's got to go toe-to-toe against Drake and show the world that he's not only a better rapper, but can play the game better than Drake. He can outdo Drake on the bars, on the commercial appeal, on success, on public perception. Like, he's got to take every aspect of being the GOAT away from Drake. And I don't think that he needs to be on the clock for something like that. Now, I know in the comments you guys are going to say I'm glazing Kendrick, but I'm a fan of hip-hop. I want quality music. I don't want rushed diss tracks. I don't want, you know, half-assed bars. I respect it. I respect if you could respond quickly when someone takes a shot at you. But what I think matters more is your legacy and what you stand for and what you bring to the public. And I think that, you know, Kendrick is calculating his next move as much as Drake was. And again, don't forget, Drake took 3 weeks to respond. And now he's acting like Kendrick needs to rush a response. I don't think it's right. but I do think that this was hilarious. This freestyle is basically just Drake rapping from the perspective of Tupac and from Snoop Dogg, telling Kendrick like, yo, you gotta hurry up and drop. We know Taylor Swift just dropped and you're scared to kind of drop on the same day because she's gonna outdo you for that #1 spot, but you gotta just do it. And then Drake comes in with his own vocals and just starts saying he's gonna take a shit on the whole PG Lang label, which is Kendrick's new label. Basically saying that Taylor Swift is Kendrick's boss, like she's controlling when he drops music because she just put out her album. And this is also in reference to, Taylor having a song with Kendrick, which Drake referenced on his first diss track as well, basically stating that Kendrick, went commercial and made bubblegum music, but like Drake has done the same thing, right? Drake has collaborated with Rihanna. Drake makes music with Sexy Red, right? Like the biggest song off his last album was Rich Baby Daddy. Like if that's not bubblegum music, go listen to Drake's verse on that, right? Like to me, Drake can't talk to Kendrick about making commercial bubblegum music because when Kendrick gets on a song with a Taylor Swift or a Maroon 5, he's still rapping. He's not compromising his integrity or the quality of his music. Whereas Drake, when he gets on a song with a Yeet or a Sexy Red, like he's kind of doing his best impression of them and conforming more to their style and compromising the quality of his music, in my opinion. So to me, that's hypocritical. It's also hypocritical that he's trying to rush Kendrick right now because he took 3 weeks to respond to Kendrick. But what's most interesting to me is that Drake just keeps emphasizing that once Kendrick drops, he has a bomb to drop on the world about Kendrick. So I'm curious to see if this is just a scare tactic to scare Kendrick from, actually participating in this beef, or if he's really got something. And again, I can't emphasize enough, I think Drake is such an easy target for Kendrick. I don't think Drake really knows what he's in for, and I don't think the world knows what we're in for when Kendrick responds. Now, I really hope I'm right, because if I'm not, then you guys can all say in the comments I've been glazing Kendrick, because I'm so confident. He's taken so much time out of this music shit, but every time he drops, the world stops. And he just puts out, groundbreaking music, and no one could compete on that level. And I think he's been wanting this beef for 10 years, and I do not think that he's going to let himself lose. Don't forget, he's as calculated as Drake is, as a rapper and with his reputation, the moves he makes. So, while Drake's putting out these funny, freestyles, rapping from the perspective of Tupac, and, this is very entertaining. I gotta say, like, Drake is keeping this hip-hop. Drake has studied the game. This is a hilarious move, and it's never been done. But I don't think Kendrick needs to be on the clock. I think Kendrick needs to just drop something that will shut the world up, that will just destroy Drake's reputation, that will just destroy Drake lyrically, and make something that A, can hit the charts at #1 like he did with that Like That feature, and B, make something that will just be so hard for Drake to respond with. But what do you guys think? Do you guys think that Kendrick is scared to drop something? That's what Drake's basically implying in this new song, that Kendrick's scared to drop. I don't think he is. I'm curious what you guys think. But do you think when he does drop, can he really go toe-to-toe against Drake? A lot of other people are saying that like Drake is the underdog here and we're underestimating how much of a challenge he really is going to be for Kendrick. But I don't know, man. I think based off what we've seen in the past with guys like Pusha T, based off the lyrical monster that Kendrick is, I don't think Drake stands a chance, and I'm just super excited to see what Kendrick's next move is going to be. But let me know in the comments, who do you guys got? Drake or Kendrick? Or AI, Tupac and Snoop Dogg? Or Taylor Swift? Let me know and I'll catch you in the next one.